Hey friends, welcome to my homestead kitchen. It is a super cold and snowy day here in North Idaho, and today I'm going to share with you my absolute favorite cookie recipe. And this recipe is great any time of year, but it is really great for the holiday season because one batch of dough makes many different types of cookies. So you can save a lot of time by making this one recipe, but having a variety of treats for your Christmas dinner or for gift giving. I love making boxes of baked goods and treats to give to people, and this is a great recipe to do that. Let's go over what we're going to need to make these cookies. You are going to need 1 cup of butter, so 2 sticks. You are going to need 3/4 of a cup of sugar. You are going to need 2 1/4 cups of flour. You are going to need 2 egg yolks, and you are going to need 1/2 teaspoon of salt and 1 teaspoon of vanilla. This time of year, I end up leaving my flour and my sugar buckets in my kitchen because I am doing so much baking. So let's go ahead and get our butter unwrapped. We're going to get this into our mixer, and then I'm going to use the beater to soften and whip this butter up. So the next thing I'm going to do, this butter is nice and beaten. It's fluffy. I'm going to add our sugar and our salt. So we need 3/4 of a cup of sugar. And like I said, this time of year, I'm doing so much baking that I just tend to leave my large buckets up here. So we're going to do 3/4 of a cup of sugar. So this is not a large batch of dough. If you want a lot of cookies, you're going to want to double or triple this batch. How many you get really depends on what variety and type of cookie you make with the dough. So let's get that out of the way. We're going to add our 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And now we're going to mix this up. So this is what our dough currently looks like. We have the butter and the sugar mixed in. We're going to add the eggs next, and then we're going to scrape this down and continue mixing it together. So this recipe calls for egg yolks, not egg whites. So we need to separate out the whites from the yolks. And so to do that, you're going to need 2 bowls. To separate egg yolks from egg whites, you're going to want your 2 bowls. 1 bowl that you are going to be putting the white into, and then 1 bowl for the yolk. Just take your egg, you're going to crack it. You can either do this 2 ways. You can use your hands or you can use the eggshells. Both are fine. Do whichever is easiest for you. Just crack that egg and let the white drain into the bowl. You're just going to rotate it back and forth and then put the egg yolk in here. I don't know why, but I always pick out, this thing has a name and I can't remember what it is. I always pick that out. If you are needing egg whites for a recipe, it's really important that you don't get any yolk in the egg white, depending on what the recipe is for. Like if you are making meringue or something like that, you don't want any egg yolk in your egg white. But because I'm only using the egg yolk, I'm not too concerned about getting some yolk into my egg white because I'm just going to feed this to the dogs. Separating out that second egg, and we have 20 chickens that are all not laying. And I do have freeze-dried eggs and some frozen eggs, but I just used the last of some store-bought eggs I had purchased. So there we have egg white, egg yolk. Let's go ahead and get back to our cookie dough. All right, so we're back at the mixer. The recipe says to add the yolks 1 at a time, scraping using a spatula or whatever you have, the sides of the bowl in between each egg yolk. I'm gonna do that. Sometimes I don't. I tend to maybe not always follow the directions in a recipe, but both my egg yolks are in the same bowl. So I'm just gonna dump about half in. All right, let's do that final scrape. We've got both egg yolks in here. All right, so we have our butter, we have our sugar and our salt, and we have our egg yolk in here. Next thing we're gonna add is our vanilla, 1 teaspoon. We're gonna give that a quick mix, and then we're gonna add 2 1/4 cups of flour. All right, so now I'm gonna add my 2 1/4 cups of flour. And I do have a knife so that I can level this off. 1, 2 1/4. Let's get this sealed back up. I love these Gamma Seal lids for getting in and out of ingredients that I use quite often. Flour, sugar, rice, oats, things like that. If you need to, you can scrape down the sides of the bowl in the middle and then just do one final mix. I am going to scrape down the bowl here. So this is what the dough will look like when you have it all done. So our dough is done. We are going to chill this for about an hour, maybe a half an hour, until it is firm and easy to work with. It is a softer cookie dough, so it's a little sticky until you chill it. So I'm gonna wrap this in some plastic, get it into my refrigerator, and then you guys can come back and join me as we make multiple different kinds of cookies from this one batch of dough. You can see that for this one, I am rolling it into a log, and that's because of the kind of cookie I'm going to make with this. All right, let's get these into the refrigerator, and I will see you in a little bit. So we're gonna go ahead and get started with this batch of cookie dough. It was only in the fridge chilling for just a few minutes because I just didn't want it to be quite as sticky. But we are going to coat the outside in chocolate. You can also do coconut, you can do nuts, you could do sugar sprinkles, anything you would want on the outside of a sliced cookie. You can roll this in. And so we want this dough to be a little bit sticky so it can pick up what we're gonna put on. Then we're gonna put it back in the fridge, chill it for several hours before we slice it into rounds. I'm using mini chocolate chips. You can use large chocolate chips, or you can use the squares of baking chocolate. Just chop them up ahead of time. I don't think I'm gonna need that many. So I'm just using a little cookie sheet here. So I have these mini chocolate chips on my cookie sheet, and I'm gonna take the dough. You can see it's still soft, and we're just gonna roll it and squish the chocolate in. You really wanna kind of smush it in there. And anywhere that you are seeing doesn't have any, you can just kind of move it around a bit. That looks pretty good. So now I'm gonna roll this up, and I want to, as I'm rolling, make sure that it is the same size, because you don't want one half of your roll to be fatter than the other. The cookies are not gonna bake the same. So let's go ahead and wrap this up. These are gonna make little tiny cookies. I am making, since I only did make a single batch of dough, I'm only gonna make a couple of each type of cookie for you to see. But normally if I would make a triple batch of dough, then I would have a rather large log of this sliced cookie. Okay, we are gonna get started making our first kind of cookie with this dough. This one is chilled enough for what we want to do with it. And I am going to make some pretzel cookies. And so we're just gonna unwrap this dough. We're gonna sprinkle a little bit of flour. You don't wanna over flour these. A little bit of flour. And I'm gonna get my cookie scooper. If you do not have one of these for making cookies, you absolutely need to get one. I'm just gonna break off a little chunk of dough. So I broke off my little chunk of dough, and sometimes I think cookie making is just Play-Doh for adults. We're gonna roll this into a snake, just like you used to do when you were a little kid. You want it to be nice and even. And then we are just going to attach this here. And then bring this one over and attach this here. And then we are also going to attach this middle. You can kind of adjust it if you need to. We're gonna get a cookie sheet, and these are going to get dipped in sugar and baked. You can also spread them with an egg wash if you would like, and then just sprinkle onto them. All right, let's go ahead and make a red one, and then I'll show you the next kind of cookie. All right. Red one. So we have pretzel cookies. The next type of cookie we are going to make is a sandwich cookie, and I'm going to use the same dough. You can tell I do not have a ton of flour on my counter. So normally if you were making an entire batch of sandwich cookies, you would be rolling out the whole batch. But because I just made a single batch, we are just making a couple of each kind of cookie. So this cookie, you're gonna use a round, whatever shape cookie cutter you'd like. Actually, let's see, no, let's go a little bigger. Should have used a tad more dough. So you're gonna wanna roll this to about 1/4 of an inch. Let's see if that's enough for 2. Yep, okay, so we're gonna make 2 rounds. And then just make sure they're the same size. They are. So now we have 2 rounds. You can either make a sandwich cookie this way, or you can cut a hole in the middle of this one so it has kind of a window. All right, so now this is just a piece of a piping bag. I'm just gonna cut a hole in the middle. So we're gonna bake these 2. And after we bake them is when you make them into a sandwich. Let's go ahead and make one that doesn't have a hole in the middle. You can see that this dough is getting a little warm because it's a little sticky. So the stickier it gets, the more flour I'm gonna need. Or you can always just wrap it and put it back in the refrigerator. This is going to be our sandwich cookies. I'm gonna put this dough back in the refrigerator. I did it in little batches so that I could put one in as I pull another one out. Okay, this next type of cookie we're gonna make is called a jam stripe, and we're just gonna roll this dough out. I'm gonna get a little more, all my flour's gone. Again, you're gonna roll 1/4 of an inch. And for this one, we are going to cut this into a perfect square or rectangle. Let's get rid of this excess dough. So this cookie will get assembled before baking. And you want them to be the exact size. So that's perfect. These need to go in the refrigerator and chill now. If I were making these jam stripe cookies with an entire batch of dough, you would have multiple large pieces of dough that you're going to chill in your refrigerator. When we take these out, we're going to spread them with jam and then stack them and chill them again. Chilling them again is going to make it firm enough that once these have jam in them and they're all stacked, we can slice our cookies off of them. So I'm going to get these into the refrigerator and get these chilling, and then we'll make another kind of cookie. This next type of cookie is my family's favorite, and I think a lot of families make this cookie during the holiday season. I absolutely love thumbprint cookies. To make thumbprint cookies, we're going to take our dough. Let me get some of this stuff out of the way. We're going to take our cookie scooper, and I'm going to make a couple of these because they are so good. We're just going to scoop off our bits of dough. Let's go ahead and make 4 because I do have a couple other cookies we want to make. You're going to roll these into balls. They don't have to be perfect. This is a great way for your kids or your grandkids to get involved in the kitchen. That one's a little smaller. Sometimes I scoop them and then I realize, oh, one wasn't the right size. You do want them all to be relatively similar in size. So we have our circles. We are now going to place these on our cookie sheet. All right, we have our thumbprint cookie balls on our cookie sheet. Now you're going to take a teaspoon and just make a well in the middle of that cookie ball. And if your dough is firm enough, it shouldn't crack. If it does crack, let me see if I can make one crack. There, see, I made that one crack right there. Keep the spoon in and you can just smush the dough back together. As your dough gets softer, it'll be harder to do this, but you also don't want it too hard. So these are ready to have some jam put in them. And I have some of my homemade raspberry jam. And we are going to just use that same teaspoon and put a blob of raspberry jam in each of these cookies. These jam thumbprints are ready for the oven. When it's cookie making day and I am making I will usually make a quadruple batch of this dough and just make a bunch of each kind of cookie. But I like it because I can make the dough all at once, but have a huge variety of cookies. So I just popped into the fridge and pulled out the sliced cookies that we prepped a little while ago. And these are the ones that we rolled in mini chocolate chips. I also like to do this with pecans or nuts or coconut. It's absolutely delicious. So let's go ahead and get these sliced up and ready for the oven. Here are our rolled log of cookie dough. And I'm just gonna, if I can find the end of it, there it is. So like I said earlier, I would normally make this a really large log, but I would be making a bigger batch. And I probably could have just made this a big one, but much shorter. You're gonna want a serrated knife and you're gonna cut these about 1/4 or 1/2 inch. And the reason we chill them is because if you tried to do this when it was soft, it would just smush. Some of these are probably bigger than 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch. So we're just gonna cut this whole log And you can see because I didn't chop the chocolate, some of it's falling off. That's okay. All right, so we're gonna have quite a bit of these cookies, but they are really small, so they're not gonna take as long to bake. So I have my cookie sheet and I'm gonna go ahead and place these on. I always kind of smush down the ends a little bit. And these are not going to spread much at all. So go ahead and place them pretty close together on your cookie sheet. So I have those jam stripe cookie squares that we put in the refrigerator to chill. I'm just going to spread some jam on each of these. You don't want too much because it is going to melt a little bit in the oven. And again, I'm just using the same jam I used for thumbprints, and I'm even using the same spoon. So we are going to put these on this plate and stack them gently. And then this one didn't get any because it's our top. And I'm going to straighten that out a little bit. Perfect. Okay, so we are going to put this back in the refrigerator and let it chill. All right, we have our jam stripe cookie, and I'm going to go ahead and cut this. And I thought of this after I put it, because this is supposed to be pretty thick. I'm just going to double these, and we won't have quite as many cookies, but they'll be thicker like they're supposed to be. So now we are just going to hold this and slice. Quite messy. I'm using a low sugar raspberry jam, so it's not quite set. All these cookies are baked, and I have one more pan that is waiting to cool before it goes onto the cooling racks. And these baked at 350 degrees, anywhere between 8 to 10 minutes and 15 to 18 minutes, depending on the size of the cookie. If you were making smaller cookies, obviously you're gonna need less baking time than a larger cookie. So our next step is to make those sandwich cookies where we have a bottom and a top and add our filling. You can use chocolate, you can use jam. I'm gonna use jam because I have one open from making these thumbprint cookies. But, and if you don't have anything homemade, use Nutella or something like that. These are really fun. So what you're gonna do is you're just gonna take your bottom cookie. You're gonna spread whatever you want on it. This is great with any flavor. If you have some fruit butter, that would be good. Got a little on the edge right there. And we're gonna put our top on the cookie. So this one type of dough made a variety of different cookie flavors and other things that you can do with this dough. When you are making a batch of it, you can add a citrus zest or an extract to the dough if you'd like it to be flavored. I like to make a icing and a drizzle, and I will often drizzle that over the thumbprints or any of these smaller cookies that don't have chocolate or a jam topping on them. This recipe is incredibly versatile. Here are those chocolate cookies that we rolled in chocolate. And like I said, you can do this with nuts. You can do this with coconut. We have these thumbprint cookies. These were made with my homemade raspberry jam. These would be really pretty with an icing on the top. We have these pretzel cookies, which are really fun for kids to make. And these rolled cookies, we have the jam stripes, which got a little soft, so they're a little messier than they normally would be. And then we also just have, I made some fun shapes because who doesn't love geese and ducks and farm animals for their cookies. One recipe, many different kinds of cookies. Thanks for watching today.